Hey everyone, it's Howard Gearhauser. On the line, you have my dad, Dr. Richard Gearhauser. In today's video episode, we want to share with you 6 important steps for you to use in your plant medicine integration process. Now, from our experience and from the experience of working with various clients who've done plant medicine, we've seen that the plant medicine experience during the ceremonies can be truly profound and amazing and mind expanding and consciousness expanding. However, trying to integrate back into your normal life can be rather challenging. So in this video, we want to give you 6 things that you can do starting today or starting tomorrow that can really facilitate this integration process, make it a lot easier, and keep you deeply connected with nature and with Mother Earth and all of these other deep connections that you felt during your ceremony. That way, life doesn't have to be so different from the ceremony itself. So let's jump right in to these 6 things that you should be doing to help with your plant medicine integration process. So number 1 is watch the sunrise. Now, watching the sunrise is a beautiful spiritual moment. You feel fantastic when you're out there, when you get to see that beautiful sun coming up over the horizon. But there's a lot of science behind why the sunrise really keeps you connected to the earth and to nature. So Dad, can you explain a little bit more about why the sunrise is so important for our health and for our connection?
Well, there's a lot of evidence that ancient peoples, like the Egyptians worship the sun. They had their sphinx facing the east. The Navajo Indians have the doorway to their teepee facing the east. A lot of African tribes are gathered together before sunrise in the pre-dawn and wait to watch the sun come up. And Carl Jung wrote in one of his memoirs that this hunter-gatherer tribe would gather from a vantage point where they could see the sunrise. And as soon as the sun would start coming up, they'd spit in their hands, rub their hands together, and place their palms toward the sun and their eyes and watch the sunrise. So that sort of comes to some of the principles of physics. Now, the physics of light, there's a electromagnetic wave that comes, that's the light, and it enters our eye and it does many functions. One of the things that the light coming into our retina, which is part of our brain, it stimulates some neurons to set our master clock in our brain. As we mentioned ad nauseum about how there are trillions of chemical reactions happening every second in our body, and they need to be coordinated and they need to be put in the proper sequence. And that can only be done with a tremendous amount of information. Well, a wave of light can carry nearly, and this is it from physics, can carry nearly an infinite amount of information, which is needed when you're trying to control trillions upon trillions of reactions per second. So the sun sets our circadian rhythm. The sun also causes the release directly of peptides that lead to the release of our hormones. So our hormonal system gets going. The sunlight does so many other things. It'd take me an hour to describe all the things that it does. But if you go to the average medical doctor or you go to the average citizen out in the city or wherever, people don't know this. This is something that we don't realize. We wear hats and sunglasses and view the sun through a window and stay indoors all the time, cover up when we go outside. So we have a belief that the sun isn't so good. And so one of the first things that you need to do so that you integrate the plant medicine better is to really, connect that plug. You're plugging into nature, like an extension cord when you watch the sunrise.
Exactly, and you're literally getting connected with the rhythm of the day and night cycles of the earth. So if you want to be plugged in, as my dad just mentioned, go watch that sunrise. Your hormones will secrete. You'll secrete dopamine, which makes you more goal-oriented and focused. There's a lot of things that happen from the sun, especially the sunrise. So this is a non-negotiable in our own lives and with those people that we work with, and especially those who are trying to integrate post-plant medicine who feel like, how on earth do I get more connected to nature? That's what we're all craving. Do this and you will feel connected, but you have to do it on a daily basis. You have to set that circadian rhythm every single day. So start watching the sunrise. Find a point where you can see the sunrise, go locate one. Make sure you know when the sun's going to rise. Ask Google or ask your phone, and be out there about 10 minutes before the sun comes up is our recommendation. No contact lenses, no sunglasses. Try to expose as much skin as you can to the sunrise too, because your skin also benefits from the various frequencies that come through at sunrise. Anything you wanted to add about our first recommendation?
No, I think this is something that if you try, it is easy to become addicted to this in a good way.
All right, so number 1 is sunrise. Number 2, start doing meditation on a daily basis. And you don't need to start with an hour. You can start with 5 minutes, but try and work your way up to an hour. My dad and I, we meditate sometimes 3 times a day, just depending on where we're at. But you need to start incorporating a meditation practice. That way you can catch those thoughts that then become emotions. And as you might have experienced in your plant medicine ceremony, these emotions get trapped in us. So if we're not aware of the thoughts that we're thinking that are turning into emotions, which are then turning into our reality, we're going to have problems, and we're going to have a reality that we don't want. So you need to incorporate meditation. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the scientific benefits of meditation?
Okay, well, meditation has been shown in scientific studies that it rebalances our autonomic nervous system. So we have the sympathetic, with the fight or flight part of our nervous system, and we have the parasympathetic, which is the recovery part of our nervous system. And so if we overstimulate the sympathetic, which is typical in the average American, they're overstimulated in their sympathetic nervous system. And when you do that, then the parasympathetic is down. So meditation automatically, instantly, maybe not instantly, but automatically brings us into balance. And again, when you meditate, one of the ideas of it is to try to stay into the present moment and maybe focusing on your breathing. The mindful breathing is also shown to bring the nervous system back into balance. But when you are focusing on the present moment, thoughts will appear. And that's why you meditate on a daily basis, because you become skilled by doing it. Now let's take, LeBron James, basketball player. He repeated things, probably since the age of 6, over and over, and he became very skilled at it. Well, meditation is the same way. If you don't practice it, then you're not going to be able to control what happens in the brain. So the way to control it is to develop the skill to let things pass. If a thought comes into your mind, you acknowledge it, let it go by, go back to the present moment.
And the other thing about meditation is this really is the practice. This is kind of the climbing the mountain, so to speak. Plant medicine, and this is something that I've discussed with some friends, but plant medicine is kind of like you get to go to the top of the mountain, you get to see what's up there, but you didn't necessarily do the climb. Over a few ceremonies, you were able to see the top of the mountain, which inspires you to do the climb, which is your meditation, and doing it on a daily basis. That's the literally inching your way up the mountain. And that's what's going to keep you elevated at a sustainable level. Just doing the plant medicine without a meditation practice is kind of like doing a crash diet. Maybe you lose 10 pounds in a week or whatever, but that weight comes right back on because you didn't actually develop the practice and the habits to keep it off. It's the same thing. The plant medicine can take you there. It can show you how beautiful life is, but you need to incorporate a meditation practice. Start with 5 minutes, but work your way up. Anything you want to add on meditation?
Yeah, and sometimes it helps to get a protocol of, because there's different phases of meditation, and so we're not going to go into that today, but getting some guidelines from a reputable source of basically how to meditate would also be helpful and highly recommended.
Yeah, we have other videos on meditation. So after this one, feel free to go check those out, as well as some of those sources of guides that we like and that we use. So moving on to recommendation number 3, start doing yoga. So yoga, I used to think like 5-6 years ago is just like a flexibility thing, like a stretching class. But there's so much more to yoga in terms of learning to control your breath, getting your energy flowing through your body properly. And it also helps strengthen the muscles for your meditation, which is really, really interesting. Can you elaborate a little bit more on why yoga is something that can really help with your plant medicine integration?
Well, yoga has the physical part of it has postures, and so these postures, were developed. Yoga was developed in India, and then there's many branches of different styles of yoga from all around the world. And now today, even Americans are putting in their own personalized stamp on their yoga practices. But basically, getting in the yoga poses, you require strength, flexibility, endurance. So all the physical things are required to do yoga. Now, as far as the energy, which is something that isn't measured so scientifically, but the energy is then allowed to flow better. Okay. But when they look at studies of yoga, and one of the things that it does, and we mentioned already how the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system get out of balance. Well, they did an interesting study where they took women that had depression, and they measured their brain levels of the neurotransmitter gamma aminobutyric acid. So they measured them with the magnetic resonance spectroscopy in the beginning, and then after doing 12-week yoga program, they measured it again. And what they found at baseline, and this has been known in other research, is that these GABA levels, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter that increases the parasympathetic or the vagus. The vagus is the biggest parasympathetic nerve in our body, the vagus nerve. The GABA activates the parasympathetic or the vagus nerve, and so therefore it quiets down the sympathetic nervous system. So they find in depressed people, they tend to have at baseline low GABA levels in a part of the brain called the thalamus. So the thalamus is kind of a communication center in the brain. And they found that after 12 weeks of doing a yoga program, that those GABA levels went up to a person's equivalent to a person that was not depressed, which is pretty interesting. And then on top of that, these patients scored much better on their depression scores. In other words, their depression was relieved. So the science is new. This kind of a science is very new, and it's just small studies. But we now have the technology to be able to measure neurotransmitters in real time with this magnetic resonance spectroscopy, which is a new thing and an amazing thing. But it's telling us that, this just isn't a religious thing. This is doing physical things inside our body. So yoga is something that can be very beneficial, and it makes you physically stronger as well, more flexible, but it also helps you mentally. It also helps you integrate the plant medicine and integrate back into nature better.
Exactly. And for me, yoga is not a daily thing. I try to do it 3 or 4 times a week. If you like to do it more, do it more. I don't think there's any amount that's too much. Also, I prefer yoga that's more holding poses as opposed to flows. That's just my preference. but I recommend getting into any sort of yoga and just trying it out. Try out different types and see which one resonates with you. All right, so to recap really quickly, number one, go watch the sunrise. Number two, get into daily meditation, even if you're starting at only 5 minutes. And number three, start incorporating a yoga practice. Try and do it at least a few times a week. Now on to number four, get electrically connected to the earth through grounding. So Dad, can you explain a little bit more about grounding and why this is so important in terms of our plant medicine integration?
So in our modern world where we have worn synthetic shoes now since 1950, and we live in houses that aren't grounded, we have carpets and wood floors, and we drive in cars that are riding on rubber tires, not grounded. Some of us are never grounded. So you need to ground at least 20 minutes a day, longer if you can, but 20 minutes a day will at least, fill your gas tank at least once a day with some electrons. Now you can do it in water, you can do it on land, you can be barefoot, you can put your hands. Damp ground conducts a little better, concrete conducts, asphalt doesn't conduct well. And as I say, wood, plastic, carpet, all the synthetic shoes don't conduct. You can buy a grounding strap, say if you're in an environment where you can't ground, you can't go barefoot, there's glass everywhere or something like that, then you can get grounding straps. Could be a downside to grounding, so I wouldn't ground yourself if there's a lightning storm going on or if you're around a ton of electrical power grid things. I probably wouldn't ground in those instances and just wear your regular tennis shoes or running shoes. But otherwise, wear the grounding strap or go barefoot. Barefoot has other benefits, connects you with nature. Humans went barefoot for millions of years, and it's just been in more recent history, we decided barefoot isn't good. And we decided high heels are good. So now we have bunions and we have arches that have collapsed, and those things can be prevented if we went barefoot. People that go barefoot don't get those kind of foot conditions that are so common. So it's just another way to connect with nature and to create more balance with more energy inside your body, more energy production, and decreasing the inflammatory processes that can lead to disease. And so this helps you integrate the plant medicine better, because anytime you have more energy, you have the ability to do the things you need to do to stay well.
And also, if you're collecting that charge by not going barefoot, by wearing, these rubber-soled shoes all the time, that can prevent energy from flowing as well. So when we think back to maybe this was part of your experience with the plant medicine, like energy feels kind of trapped inside of you in those little energy packets. Well, if you ground, you're going to clear this channel. You're going to keep it clear, along with the other recommendations too. So it's important that you're neutralizing that charge on a daily basis is what we recommend. Everyone can relate to that feeling of barefoot on the beach watching a sunset, right? I mean, that's like the most connected you can pretty much feel. There's a reason for that. So start doing that more. So grounding, start with 20 minutes a day. My dad now does desert trails barefoot, stepping on thorns and sharp rocks. So you can get to that point if you want to, but just start slow, start incorporating it. All right, so let's move on to something that you can do. This is number 5 on our list, and that is nature breaks. So what the heck's a nature break? Well, for many of us, we have 9-to-5 jobs. We're working, we're trying to support a family or whatever the reason for the work is. And oftentimes that 9-to-5 job is inside. So you want to incorporate 10 to 15 minute nature breaks where you can go out in nature, take your shoes off, get some sun exposure. What are the health benefits of nature breaks, and how does this help with the integration process?
Okay, as far as the science goes, there's more evidence building up that if people get nature breaks, there are all kinds of health and mental benefits. But I think just the intuitive thought that, everything that we're relating to, everything that we came from is nature. And so a nature break just for us is common sense. We know it makes us feel better. Sometimes it's not so easy to do, but the research, goes on and on. There's research showing that plants give off chemicals that actually have biologic effects in us. So these chemicals, they call it Japanese forest treatment or forest medicine, where in Japan, they've done studies where they actually found that going out into the forest has medicinal properties, just going out in the forest. So there's all these possibilities related to nature, and we know it helps. So we just put that as a high priority, and we know how good it makes us feel. And then we know that when we did plant medicine, one of the major themes was, hey, this is nature really working on me. This is nature kicking my butt. And then it just becomes a logical thing. The problem is, you're in a big city or something like that, there's parks. Find a park, find a place, even if it's just, a small piece of grass in downtown New York City. Anything that gets you next to a plant, a rock, or anything natural, and things that are man-made are not necessarily unnatural. So it could be a church or a statue or something like that.
Exactly. And I think a big part of the nature break too is the idea of giving yourself some time in between the day. I think it can be really easy to get caught up in an emotional loop if you go to work and you're kind of doing the same thing every single day, like you're stuck in traffic and then your boss is in a bad mood and you get kind of hung up in this negative emotional loop. If you give yourself these little breaks throughout the day, you can reset and go back into your workplace or back into your life with an elevated emotion. And that's really important. And getting out in nature brings that elevated emotion a lot easier than staying cooped up inside. As you can see, my dad right now, he's actually set up his office outside. So if you have the luxury of doing that, I can't do it because I'm in a loud area of San Diego and there's trucks beeping, but I spend a ton of time outside when I'm not doing videos, when I'm not working with clients. So start incorporating these nature breaks. They'll become a really exciting part of the day. All right, let's move on to number 6. And this one's really important too. And this is darkness. Okay, so what do we mean by darkness? When the sun goes down, if you were out camping, for example, the only light you would have, in the primitive times would be from fire, if you're lucky enough to even start a fire. We didn't have all of these artificial lights that we have today that pretty much trick our brain into thinking it's daytime, whenever we want it to be. We don't have these natural day and night cycles. So why is darkness so important for our plant medicine integration process?
Okay, well, darkness, is just as important as daylight. So we have things that are biochemically supposed to happen in the darkness and things that biochemically are supposed to happen during the daylight. But in our modern world, we've kind of turned that up on its end. And so, we're commonly exposed to bright lights after the sun goes down. And that's a new thing, and it creates problems. One of the biggest, most important hormones for our energy, for anti-aging so we don't age rapidly, for the recovery of damage that occurs during the day is the hormone melatonin that is released from the pineal gland in the response to darkness. So here, one of the most important hormones you could ever imagine, and it's so complex that the science is just now starting to unravel all the things around melatonin. And no, don't take melatonin pills. That is not the answer. Melatonin from a pill has the potential to mess you up, in my opinion. Now, I know a lot of people take melatonin because, they sell it everywhere. So there must be a lot of you out there buying it. But I don't recommend melatonin pills because it is so tightly controlled to light that if you're taking melatonin pills and you got the light on in your kitchen, you could be messing yourself up. And animal studies show this actually happens, that you can damage the retina of animals if you give them melatonin and you keep the laboratory lights on, damage their eyes. So I don't mess with melatonin except in real particular cases, like maybe if you're trying to treat jet lag or something like that, to use it for a day or two. So melatonin is just one aspect. There's many, many others. So we'd like to get the darkness back. Now, an artificial or higher tech way to get the darkness back is to block light. You need to block the frequencies, and we talk about this in detail in other videos. You have to block the 550 and below frequencies of visible light in order to not affect your melatonin levels, and those are the orange or amber or reddish glasses that you wear. Skin also should be covered. Light, fire, which is orange and red, doesn't decrease your melatonin. Humans have been using fire. It's estimated at about 800,000 years. So fire is probably okay. You can use candles. You could use a kerosene lamp. You could use a salt lamp. The salt lamps, if you notice, they're amber. So when you have an amber colored light, then the higher frequency blues and greens are eliminated from that light so that you don't disrupt your melatonin.
And another thing to consider about the light as it relates to plant medicine and the ceremonies with the plant medicine, oftentimes they're done at night. And there's all this light pollution and stuff that we have, like in San Diego. It's not the worst I've seen, but like Los Angeles, for example, it's like you can't even see the stars. You can't barely see the moon. It's like there's a lot going on at night in terms of energy, in terms of the way our bodies respond to it in that deep restorative sleep, in our dreams, and all these different things. We want to be protective of that and not just treat nighttime like it's a big pain in the butt. We want to be respectful of it because there's so much that goes on that we still don't even understand during the night. So don't bombard yourself with a bunch of fake lights that are making it seem like it's noon in the middle of the day. So the blue blockers, we have a whole video on artificial light at night. I recommend that you go check that out for some greater insights. And we also know that there's a lot more to the story of plant medicine integration. Okay, these are just 6 things that you can start doing right away that don't require a lot of money to do. Most of these things are free. And I promise if you do these things, you're going to feel more connected like you did during your plant medicine ceremonies. And you can maintain that. You can continue to build upon it. But it does require some change. It does require prioritizing these different techniques, especially if you're very busy. You got to make time for this stuff. That's how you're going to get the most out of your integration process. So we'll definitely do more videos on how to integrate plant medicine. And we have tons of videos just like this that can teach you how to optimize your mind, body, and spirit using nature, using technology, using science, and using ancient wisdom. Is there anything you wanted to add, Dad?
No, I think a good way to think of the darkness in the day is to go camping. That's a great way. Don't take, the 500 lumen lantern with you. Maybe have a little pen light. Red is best, so you can see, to get something or to brush your teeth or whatever. But camping is a way to kind of restart your ability to get back into the natural rhythm of day and night. And if you can camp for a week, it's amazing how after a week, you're totally in sync with this light and dark cycle. And I think it should be a new law that everybody has to camp at least 1 week out of the month.
Well, exactly. And that just kind of goes back to this whole plant medicine's a concentrated dose of nature. If you just think about it from that standpoint, do things that are more natural, do more things in nature. Think about how our world would be without the advancement in technology and all of these new things that we have. If you can just kind of, from a common sense standpoint, visualize what that would look like, you'll probably get pretty clear answers of what your life could look like if you start incorporating more nature. So these are some great ideas to start with, but do that too. Think about how can I be more natural, then you'll be in flow. You'll be a part of that circadian rhythm. And the integration process is going to be a heck of a lot easier. So if you're struggling, make sure to do these things. Even if you're not struggling, if you're not doing all of them, I recommend giving them a try because they're a lot of fun. Anything else, Dad?
No, good talking to you today.
All right, everyone, make sure to subscribe to our channel, Quantum Possibility. Again, we're giving away our best information completely free because we really want to serve you guys, and we really appreciate you tuning in. Thanks, Dad. Talk to you soon.